Live. And we are live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Grandma's Marathon Minneapolis Running Team Kickoff Party. Woohoo! This is an occasion to celebrate, as you can see from the banner that might be backwards, depending on how this is displayed. That's actually left over from a birthday party. But it's very fitting because tonight kicks off, or rather tomorrow kicks off, the 16-week training schedule for everyone running Grandma's Marathon, which hopefully is everyone here. My name is Nathan Freeberg, and I am really excited to be starting this journey with all of you. I'm going to be running Grandma's. It will be my second Grandma's, my 6th overall marathon, which is very exciting. And I just think it's going to be so fun to be running with all of you up on the North Shore. I actually grew up in Grand Marais, which is a couple hours north of Duluth. And so it's going to be a bit of a fun homecoming for me. So a little bit about kind of how these Q&As are going to work. We're going to be doing them once a month, and they are really designed to answer kind of any and all questions you might have about Grandma's, about training for a marathon, just about surviving that process. And so there'll be some guests, some running experts, some Grandma's experts, some of you reading through the forum. There's a couple of you that have run Grandma's lots and lots of time. So that's very exciting to hear. Just a little bit of insight into the course and some of those things. So it's going to be fun. To kick things off tonight, I just wanted to share a little bit, and we'll go for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so. Really depends on kind of the level of questions, or the number of questions, I should say, that you guys have. And so if, for those of you who are not familiar with Google+, maybe a quick kind of orientation of that, or Hangouts rather, there should be somewhere, it's on the left for me, a little Q&A box. And when you open that up, you can submit a question and just feel free to type in whatever question you have. And then I'll kind of pause it a few different times during this and answer them, and hopefully give you all kinds of just mind-shattering nuggets of wisdom. And I think that a lot of you will be able to answer some stuff. If I maybe ask a question from some of you that I don't know, I'll open it up, and if anyone else knows, then we can do that as well. So that's how that works. So just kind of throw out any questions that you have. And again, this should be on the left. Maybe it's on the right. And you can kind of see, I can tell right now we have a handful of people watching this. So, but just a few quick numbers here about our team. So as of 8 minutes ago, there are 87 people who are signed up for the full and 12 who are running the half. Now, again, I don't know how accurate those numbers are because it all kind of depends on who actually filled out the form. So more people may actually be signed up than who wrote it down on the form, because there's actually 180 people who said that they were signed up, wanted to be on the Minneapolis running team, but only 87 who actually went through the registration process with Grandma. So, and if you didn't go through the registration process yet, I know that I sent out an email yesterday saying that was the deadline, but there might be a little wiggle room on that. So let me know if that's you. So that's pretty exciting. We have almost 100 people between the two events running, and I just think that's so exciting. Being a virtual team, we are going to have some in-person meetups down the road, but it's just fun that we're all coming together to do this together. And again, I think misery loves company, so hopefully we can commiserate in all of that together. So 87 of you running the full marathon. And so what does that mean? It means that we get the team bus, and I have yet to get some details from the Grandma's folks to find out exactly what that means. But basically we have our own bus. So wherever that picks us up, it drops us off at the starting line, which is helpful. And then you have to find your own way home, but hopefully that's already been figured out. So we get our own bus, which means we don't have to wait in lines. You don't have to ride that bus. I know a couple of you emailed me saying that you have other transportation or you're going to figure something else out. So that's totally fine. But we don't have to wait in line. We just hop on there and get to the starting line. If you don't know, it's about, I don't know, half hour, somewhere in there from Duluth, which is probably where most of you are staying, up to Two Harbors, which is where the starting line is. So that's very exciting. Another kind of piece of info is that some of you have been asking about lodging, and we did not qualify for that. You needed 150 people to qualify for the guaranteed entry with that. But tomorrow, March 2nd, UMD is opening up their lodging options. And so if you actually go, I believe that there's a link, someone, thank you for doing that, whoever that was, I forget at the moment. But if you go to the Grandma's forum, there's a lodging topic, transportation and lodging. And someone actually left a link there. Thank you very much to the UMD site. And there's also, I think, St. Scholastica and another school up there that has lodging as well. Yes, Eric left that link. So you can go check that out. And I'll actually share that in the notes as well for this thing, if I can do that. You can check that out. It is expensive. I think that's just the reality of, Duluth only has so many beds available for this. And so it is kind of expensive. There's Airbnb that you can try to get in. That's also expensive. I think almost all the hotels are already booked up for this. So hopefully you can find someone to stay with if you don't already have a place, and maybe, check out the forum and leave, say, hey, I need somewhere to stay, or I need a ride, or something like that. So that's very exciting that opens up and then we're available. So a couple things I wanted to share tonight. And then again, if you have questions, feel free to just leave them in the sidebar. And I'm checking them right here. My question thing is open on the side. As you can tell, this is going to be pretty informal. So, all right, where'd it go? There it is. So when I was reading through all the comments, I noticed that there are a ton of you who this is your very first marathon, not only first grandma's, but first marathon. And thinking back to my first marathon, which was also grandma's, I remember that I didn't know really what I was doing. And there was a couple of things that really took me by surprise, kind of outside the whole realm of just training, because that's a whole brutal beast in and of itself. But the first thing was I was always hungry. Training for a marathon is a lot of work, and I was always hungry. And what I found was that I would just eat whatever was in front of me. And so over the last few years, I have kind of learned that I need to actually be really intentional about what food I have around, what kind of stuff is in the kitchen, in the pantry, because otherwise I'll just eat it because you're so hungry. And I think there's this mindset of I'm training for a marathon, and so I can eat whatever I want. And, it's not going to affect you the same way it will someone who's not running, but you still want to make sure that you're eating healthy and kind of having stuff around you. So kind of quick tip one is, just plan to have a lot of healthy food around you so that you eat healthy food and don't just kind of stock up on junk. The second thing I was not expecting was the amount of laundry. And, my first marathon, I wasn't running as much as I do now, but I was still running a lot. And so I felt like I was doing laundry all the time. I didn't really have as many running specific clothes. And so I was doing running laundry constantly. Well, a little trick that I've learned is if you go to Target, you can get the C9 stuff, and it's relatively inexpensive. And so maybe pick up a couple pairs of shorts, pick up, shirts, whatever you need. And for about $100, you can really kind of outfit yourself for, a whole week of running, and then only have to do laundry once. I still definitely think that you want to get at least, one quality, or Target stuff is quality, but one more high-end kind of thing for maybe workouts, long runs, definitely the race, because it is just better. It's also about twice as expensive. But that way you're not, having to run and smell like clothes the next day. The other thing that's kind of helpful is to just throw your stuff in the wash on rinse only, and then it won't smell. It's just easier and quicker, and you can kind of, spit it out that way. So waiting for some questions to come in here. I see there's a handful of viewers. Please go ahead and submit those questions as you have them. The other thing that I did not anticipate was how you have to kind of schedule out your entire week based around your long run. Long run is anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. Hopefully it's not more than 3, but it's a lot of time. And so, if your long run is going to be on Saturday, what does that mean for Friday night? What does that even mean for Thursday? If it's going to be on Sunday, your whole weekend is kind of wrapped up in that. And so I was finding that I was having to kind of explain to friends why I couldn't go out later, or just going out and regretting it the next day because I was so tired, or pushing my run back farther in the day. Then it would get too warm. Not as much probably in April and May, but definitely into June it can be. So you really kind of have to plan this out. And the reason that I'm sharing this now is because you have the benefit of having several weeks, months ahead of you, really your entire training plan, depending on what you're doing. And so if you can sit down now and just spend 20 minutes even just kind of mapping it all out, thinking through, all right, what do I want to do? What do I want to, what is it going to be like in the middle of April, May, beginning of June? What's going on in my life, and how do I map this out and kind of plan other things around it, so that it doesn't surprise you and kind of come up out of nowhere to the point where you're maybe confused or a little bit annoyed even, because why do I have this 2-hour run on Saturday and I don't want to have that? So a couple of very quick, brief things that I just wanted to let you know that, yeah, so there's that. The other thing that I noticed kind of reading through the comments, that there were a number of questions or maybe just kind of wonderings about how do you pace? How do you set goals? How do you know kind of where do you sort of focus your mind on that? It seems like reading through the comments that there's no one who's brand new to running, which is good because marathon probably shouldn't be the first thing that you do. So you're at least familiar a bit with kind of the whole running, paces and goals. So here's a kind of two ways to think about it. So one, your first goal should always be to finish the marathon. Even if you've done a bunch of these, I think that the marathon is a beast in of itself, that if you don't give it that kind of respect where you think, oh, for sure I'm going to finish, it has a way of destroying you. Of my 5 marathons, 2 of them, I was not sure if I was going to finish. And it was pretty bad. So your first goal should always be to finish, even if you're trying to go sub 3 or qualify for the Olympics. That's the first goal. Then the second goal is that's kind of up to you. And, I say that knowing that there's a lot of ways to go about it, and that's actually not very helpful. So one way to look at it is you can, if you go to Minneapolis Running and just type in VDOT into the search bar, it'll pull up our VDOT calculator. And this is actually created by Jack Daniels, the running coach, not the distiller, from the Run Smart project, or the Smart Run project. I can't remember. I think it's Run Smart project. And basically what a VDOT calculator is you can put in a previous race time. So even if it's just a 5K, you can plop that in and it'll tell you, estimate for you what potentially you could run for a marathon, half marathon, 10K, whatever. And that's a great place to start. Now, obviously it's not completely accurate because when I put in my 5K PR, that doesn't equal my marathon time and vice versa, but it's within a handful of minutes that it's at least a good place to start. So if you go to Minneapolis Running and type in VDOT to the pace or to the search bar, and actually I'm going to pull it up right here right now, so that'll be even more helpful. But that is a great way, a very easy way to estimate and calculate what your pace or what your goal might be. And so, yeah, so minneapolisrunning.com/VDOT-calculator. The other cool thing that tool does is it actually gives you some estimated paces. And so if I'm looking at this here, if I have a, training, it'll kind of tell you what you want to do your long run at, your easy day, and some other stuff like that. And again, that's just a really helpful tool so that you can know, are you doing this correctly? Are you in the right paces? Are you way off? Kind of what the heck should you do? So, hey, we've got a question. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I appreciate that. So long-time listener means 14 minutes. Great question. All right, so the question is about, Grandma's Marathon. If you didn't know, it's on June 20th, which means that it is basically a spring marathon, since spring is the next day. And so how does that differ in the approach to a fall marathon? And I would say the biggest thing is that in a fall marathon, you're not dealing with winter weather. Hopefully not dealing with winter weather. I guess it depends on where you live. So one of the biggest differences or challenges is really right now. So as you're starting this, it's March, it's cold, it's snowy. There's, depending on where you live, again, in Minnesota, in the city or not, there are a number of kind of ways to get around that. So one of the things you can do is use a treadmill. Which sounds crazy, and I hate running on a treadmill, but it's really actually beneficial if you have access to one, and that's specifically for speed work. And I know some of you are first timers and you're not even thinking about speed work, but if you're following our plan, there are some days where you are going a little bit faster, and so that can be a great way to kind of approach some of those things. I would still always recommend doing your long run outside, just because that's going to be the best way to do it. And when you're going long outside, hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll only be maybe a couple of weeks where the weather is still really brutal, and then it'll get a little bit nicer from there. But so the biggest thing is kind of dealing with weather. In the summertime, so for Twin Cities specifically is what this Rich asked the question about. So always heat, Minnesota, humidity of the Minnesota summer going through August can be very brutal. And so you're always thinking about hydration. At least I am. I'm always thinking about how do I hydrate? How do I hydrate? Got to stay hydrated. Well, when you're training for a spring marathon, you might not think about that. And so as much because it's just not as warm. And so a big thing to kind of keep in mind is just make sure that you're taking in enough liquids, enough fluids, all that stuff, because that's really something that, you might forget about, and then that can have some compounding effects on you later in your training. So it can lead to injury, it can do some other stuff, and that can really be not good down the road, obviously. So yeah, kind of the biggest approach I think is just when you gear up, you're wearing tights and winter gloves and a winter hat and possibly some yak tracks. And so in my two experiences, again, I've only done grandmas once, but the start, so here's, I guess, another way to say it is the start of your training can really feel much slower and take a lot longer to kind of ramp into it because, most people have done maybe a spring or summer race before launching into training for a fall marathon. So they've kind of already got that. Whereas with a spring marathon, you're going to kind of not building from scratch. Hopefully you've been running some base miles, but it's just, you might feel a little bit slower and maybe not as kind of ready to go. So hopefully that answers your question. Great question on that one. Thank you. Any other questions, please ask them. Just drop them right in the box there. I've only got a couple other things to share. And then if we don't have any more questions, we can all go to bed and get our beauty sleep, which is the next thing I want to talk about. So sleep is important. And if you don't know that by now, you are in for an interesting, I don't want to say rude awakening, but so I was reading an article that 9 hours is the optimal amount of sleep that endurance athletes need to get. And that's ridiculous because I don't know anybody that sleeps for 9 hours. I guess my son sleeps for 10, sometimes 12 hours, but he's 2 and he's allowed to do that. He doesn't have a job yet, although we're working on that. So finding sleep and figuring out how to do that, because a lot of us, and there's another awesome question. Someone says there were ads on the right side when I opened the page, had to click on the tile or tic-tac-toe looking icon. Oh, ads, that's not good. There should not be ads. Thank you, Eric. Ads, why are there ads? Anyway, select on the right corner above the video, then select Q&A, Eric says. Okay, thank you, Eric. Back to sleep. Don't go back to sleep. Hopefully you're awake. Anyway, long story short, try to find a way to, starting now, to find extra time to sleep. If you're running, if you have a job, if you have a family, if you have a life of any kind, you are more than likely, not really able to carve out large chunks of time to, sleep. Go to bed at 9 o'clock at night and wake up at 5. So, but figuring out how do you do that? How do you carve out even half an hour extra minutes from what you're getting now? And the reason for that is because obviously you're going to be tired from running, but sleep is when your body recovers. Sleep is when your body rejuvenates. It's when human HGH, human growth hormone, which you may have heard of in, doping scandals, but it's actually a way that when your body reproduces that, and helps kind of build up back all the muscles and tendons and ligaments and everything gets broken down and busted up when you're running. And so sleep is one of the best ways to help recover that. It's also really good for your brain. So find ways to do that. Okay. Question. Who's got a question? Someone must have a question about Grandma's Marathon, about training for marathon. I have a couple others here that I will kind of share. So one question I saw on the message board was about the course. Is it flat? Is it hilly? What is it? Again, I've only run it once, but here's what I remember. I remember it being totally flat. I know that it's not. If you look at the elevation chart, it's not totally flat. But it's nothing like Twin Cities, if you have run that before, which has some fairly significant hills. There is, on Grandma's, there is a hill towards the end. I don't remember exactly what mile. But it's really not even much of a hill at all. Lemon Drop Hill, I believe is what it's called. And so if you look at the elevation chart, there are some ups and downs, but it's nothing like Twin Cities. It's a fairly flat course. It's also right along Lake Superior. It's the scenic highway, again, from Duluth to Two Harbors. And it's gorgeous. I remember, many places there was a great breeze coming off the lake. And if you've ever been up north, that can be freezing cold because Lake Superior is freezing cold, but it can feel really good. So just depending on the weather, I know that, that time of year up north, it can be freezing and raining, or it can be hot and humid. It's probably less likely to be hot and humid, but that's obviously possible. So the course is great. It's beautiful. It is point to point. It is kind of difficult for friends and family to watch you, just because there's only one road to get there and you're running on it. And so if they do want to come watch you, maybe come early, or I don't know, bring bikes and kind of figure that out. But and I know there's better ways to do that, and we'll talk about. I'll find some stuff and email it out after the fact. So, all right, who else has questions? Question and answer only works the best with questions. So, who's got a question? Now I'm going to stall just a little bit, but I think the last maybe thing I'll say, and then if no one else has a question, if you can't figure out how to ask a question, then you can always email me, Nathan@minneapolisrunning.com. And if you don't have my email already, you should, because I think I've sent out, I don't know how many hundreds of emails to you guys, and I'm checking it on my phone right now just to see if anyone has emailed me saying, hey, we can't access this. Doesn't look like it. Coaching. I know I've mentioned this a couple times. If anyone's interested in that, working with Coach Antonio Vega, and basically the way that it works, it's a group coaching. Well, there's group and there's individual. And so the group coaching is basically like a group chat. You get on the phone once a week. All right, we have another question. Get on the phone once every other week and kind of talk with Antonio, and he'll make suggestions, give you some adjustments, and you have a custom plan that's all kind of built around you and your goals and your history and all of that stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, it's definitely not too late to join that. Just again, shoot me an email or reply to one of the ones that I've sent you before. All right. Eric has a great question. What is it like from a number, from spectator perspective? I think he's asking about how many spectators are there. So again, this is what, from my memory, from running it back in 2007, I remember there was a lot of spectators at the beginning, a lot in the middle, and then basically, I don't want to say wall to wall, but pretty much from the time you entered Duluth to the finish line, it was just packed. There were a number of places along the route where it was fairly sparse. So unlike Twin Cities, and you should expect that, right? You're not in a city. You're kind of out in not the middle of nowhere, because it's a very well traveled place, but there's just not a lot. And as I was saying earlier, it's just not really easy to get to. So, but again, from what I remember, the crowds were there's a pretty good crowd of runners, and so it felt like there was plenty of support, plenty of people around, and I think that everyone who lives around there and everyone who might have been up there just visiting were also out there. So while you might not have the walls of people as you do in Twin Cities, you definitely had lots of people every, I don't know, quarter mile, half mile. So good question, Eric. I think that's one of the things that I've realized, that I love crowd support. I might not admit it all the time, but I definitely enjoy people. I also enjoy the anticipation of seeing people. And so knowing my family or friends are going to be at a certain point. Some of my running buddies were at like the halfway point this last year, and just knowing that they were going to be there was just really exciting, and kind of, one of those mile posts and kind of milestones to, get there and make sure that you kind of have those little check boxes along the way to get you to the finish. So other questions from folks. And again, we'll have some other guests in the future on here. And so it won't just be me talking to myself, because I'm just looking at my own image here. But the other thing too, I want to just kind of throw out there is if you have questions, or rather if you have people that you'd like to ask your questions to. So, if you can think of a famous runner who I also know, kind of anyone in Minnesota that you might think of, oh, this person might be interesting to talk to, Dick Beardsley, or someone that, I might be able to call in some favors from other people I know and get them on here. Or I'm hoping to have the race director on here in the future, just to kind of talk through the course, talk through the race, talk through all of that stuff. So it'll be fun. There's lots to come. We have 16 weeks. This is a very long process. Slow and steady is kind of the name of the game with marathon, but fast and frequent is also nice too. So any other questions that anybody has? I'm just staring at the little Q&A box waiting for something else to pop up. If not, that's totally fine. I know that you may not even know what to ask. And so there's that part of it too. So yeah, so, well, I think I'll kind of wrap things up here and just sort of leave you with this little word of hopefully encouragement, but good for you. Good for you for doing this. Whether this is your first marathon, whether you've run 15 of these things, running a marathon is not easy. Running a marathon is not something that everyone can do or should do. And so good for you for doing this. And, you know, in a couple of weeks when you're starting to feel that soreness and fatigue kind of set in for the first time, stick with it, hang in there, because that feeling when you cross the finish line is just unbelievable. And it's amazing if you are also anywhere close to whatever goals that you have set for yourself. So hang in there. Hopefully this group, this forum, this team can be a place where you can maybe commiserate, where you can maybe share some frustrations, share some excitements. You know, hey, this 20-mile run went so well and I didn't think it was going to go well, whatever it is. But this can kind of be your place. Oh, we have another question. This can be your place kind of along the journey where you can help each other out. Eric, you're doing awesome asking these questions, so thank you. All right, another question from Eric. I'm just going to read it all out loud here. Is it all more mentally challenging due to the fact that you can see a tiny lift bridge or the finish way off in the distance? That's a great question. So what he's referring to here is when you're running Grandma's Marathon, you can see the famous Duluth lift bridge for miles. I don't know, 15 miles, 10 miles. It's a long way. And for me, when I ran it, I had been warned about this. I had a bunch of people tell me, you know, it's an optical illusion. You're going to see it way before you're anywhere close. And then not only that, back up, when you, so you see it and then you kind of wind around in the city a little bit first. I don't even know if it's a couple miles or what, but so even when it's like right there, you kind of don't take a direct route there. And so long story short, yes, I think it was mentally challenging for me, even when I knew that, even when I had been prepared for that, because if you can see your goal and just sits there, it feels like you're not getting any closer, you're not getting there any closer to it. So what I did, and what I would encourage you to do, is set other goals. I mentioned, you know, the Spectators, the miles, maybe, you know, it's every couple miles. And, you know, if possible, you know, it's going to be hard to ignore because eventually you get fixated on it, but try not to. Try to think about something else. Try to set, you know, when you're doing your race strategy, try to set other things out there right in front of you as, you know, mile markers, as, you know, literal and figurative, as kind of things to shoot for on the horizon. But I mean, the lift bridge is beautiful. It's a, you know, I don't know how many of those are left in the country, but it's awesome to see, but it does get frustrating after, you know, half hour, an hour, just kind of staring at it. So, and it might not be that long, but Eric, that's an awesome question. Thank you very much. All right. Well, I think, and if no one has any other questions, that is going to do it. Right now we have these scheduled for, I think it's the first Sunday of every month, the first Sunday night. If there's a lot of interest, if more of you want to do these, I'm happy to kind of set this up and do this on a more frequent basis. We'll just kind of see what the demand and needs of the group are. This is going to be a very open and flexible and hopefully fun kind of setting and time for us to dive into all things marathon and all things grandma. So thanks for hanging out. Those of you who did, I can see the little viewers down there. So right now there's 5 that were more earlier, but thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of our team, the 87 strong full marathon participants. So thanks a lot. Have a great evening and enjoy the kickoff, the start to your grandma's 2015 experience. Have a good night.